All right, today I want to tell you a story. It's kind of like a modern financial parable about this couple, Mary and Max. And their story is, well, it's pretty much a blueprint for building wealth. That's shockingly simple. It doesn't involve any of the crazy, high risk stuff you might be thinking of.
So let's just get this out of the way right now. This is not a story about some brilliant startup idea or winning the lottery or getting a huge inheritance from a long-lost uncle. Nope, Mary and Max were regular people with regular jobs. Their path to becoming millionaires was paved with something way more accessible than luck or genius.
So that's the big question, right? If they didn't do any of those get-rich-quick things we always hear about, what in the world did they do? Well, the answer is both incredibly simple and, honestly, profoundly powerful. Let's break it down.
You know, it all began with this one little promise they each made to themselves way before they even knew each other. A small, almost forgettable decision that, it turns out, laid the foundation for everything that came later.
So picture this. Mary and Max are in their mid-20s, just starting out in their careers. They're not thinking about being millionaires or retiring early or any of that stuff. They were just focused on getting their feet under them. But they both happened to work for companies that offered one really crucial perk.
And that perk was a 401k match. Look, the best way to think about this is it's just free money. I mean, literally, your employer is basically offering to hand you extra cash just for saving some of your own. It is without a doubt the single best return on investment you will ever get. Period.
And that's exactly what they both did. They weren't trying to be super aggressive investors at this point. Nope. They just did the bare minimum to make sure they didn't leave that free money on the table. It was a small, consistent, but absolutely vital first step.
So for years, this is how it went, each on their own path. But then, something changed. They found each other, fell in love, and together they made a decision that would completely light a fire under their financial future.
At age 35, they tied the knot, and as they started talking and planning their life together, they realized they both deeply cared about building a secure future. Not just about making a living, but about building something that would eventually give them total freedom.
So right then and there, they made a pact, a simple vow that became their financial North Star. They decided, we're going to max out everything we can. No excuses, no exceptions. Every single year.
So what did maxing out everything actually look like? Well, it wasn't some super complicated strategy. It was really just two steps. First, they were going to put the absolute maximum amount the law allowed into both of their 401ks. And second, they were going to do the exact same thing with their Roth IRAs, which is an amazing tool that lets your money grow and come out completely tax-free later on.
Okay, so this is where that promise they made to each other turns into a seriously powerful math equation. When you see the actual numbers behind their commitment, you really start to get just how big of a deal this was.
And the numbers, they're pretty significant. Each one of them individually was putting away about $23,000 a year into their 401k and another $7,000 into a Roth IRA. So you add that up, and that's around $30,000 per person per year.
And here's where that power of being a team really kicks in. Together, that's $60,000 a year, every single year like clockwork being invested for their future. That is a financial force of nature.
But wait, it gets even better. See, the system actually lets you put even more money away once you hit age 50. They're called catch-up contributions. For them, it meant their annual investment jumped from around $60,000 to almost $77,000 a year. It was like hitting the accelerator in that final stretch before retirement. So they had the system, right? And they had the numbers. But there were two other kind of secret ingredients that made this whole thing explode. And the first one, well, it's pretty much the most powerful force in the universe when it comes to investing.
Just look at this journey. It's a 30-year commitment. They made that huge decision at 35, they got that extra boost at 50, and they just stuck with the plan day in and day out all the way to 65. That long-term view, that was their first secret weapon.
30 years. That's the magic number. They just gave the plan time to breathe, to work its magic. They didn't get bored, they didn't get distracted, and they certainly didn't panic and sell when the market got rocky. They just stuck to the system.
And that second ingredient, it was just being realistic. They weren't trying to find the next Amazon or trying to perfectly time the market. Nope. They just put their money in broad index funds and figured they'd get a simple average return of about 8% a year over those 30 years. No magic, just math.
So what happens when you take that insane consistency and you combine it with 30 years of time and just a regular average market return? What do you get at the end of that 30-year journey? You get this, $7.3 million.
all from a simple, repeatable system they started 3 decades earlier.
But honestly, this story isn't really about the $7 million. That number is just the result. The real story, the real lesson, is about what that money bought them. It's about freedom.
By age 65, their life was completely transformed. There was no stress about money. They weren't forced to keep working. They could travel wherever they wanted, spend priceless time with their family, and just wake up every single day with a real sense of peace. Now that is the real return on investment.
So, what's the blueprint Mary and Max left for us? It's simple, really. Start as early as you can. Or, hey, just start now. Be relentlessly consistent. Max out whatever you possibly can, even if it's just that company match to start. Then you just have to let time do the heavy lifting and fight every urge you have to try and outsmart the market.
Building real wealth doesn't happen in one big, flashy moment. It's built in thousands of small, consistent, and kind of boring decisions that you repeat over decades. Mary and Max had a dead simple system that they just followed without fail. So the only real question left to ask is, what's yours?